What's up, everybody? It's your boy Cedric with Extra Christianity, and today I am on the road somewhere, and I just kind of had this thought about the Democrat Party and the long, hard, arduous road they have ahead for themselves. I've said before, and have indicated a number of times, that I am a conservative man. And so you can imagine my delight with the current state of things, DEI, wokeness. A number of these terrible ideologies have taken a severe blow with Trump's presidency, but there's even more going on here that Democrats and liberals are going to have to deal with even after Trump's presidency. So the first thing is that essentially for the last 8 years, and longer of course, but specifically during the era of Trump in politics, liberals have fought really, really hard for overly wrought liberal ideas, particularly when it comes to wokeness. The Democrat Party has basically adopted a lot of wokeness, and as a result, they have basically needed to cater to a ton of woke people. Wokeness is not good. It's very, very bad. LGBTQism, this whole thing is essentially a large demographic of people that they've catered to for many years, and a lot of ideas within that group of people are bad ideas. And so basically, with Trump winning in an overwhelming fashion, it's shown that people are basically sick of wokeness. There's economic concerns and woke concerns, and it's clear that the overwhelming majority of Americans are not into wokeness. They're not. And so the Democrat Party has a huge problem. Here's the problem. They've essentially adopted and fed this enormous monster that they now cannot abandon. And that monster is LGBTQism. Like, that's basically the problem. They don't know what to do. If you watch the current political happenings, all the people on the Democrat Party politically, in government, in Congress, they're all grasping at straws. A lot of them still, believe it or not, are going after the whole Trump is a racist, he's a Nazi, that sort of thing. There's like the trans issue, right? The American people have made it clear that they are not for, the implications of trans ideology. People have been doing trans stuff forever, right? Like this is not a new thing. People have been on the trans bandwagon for a very long time. Whether it's with like what was considered cross-dressing or other words that are considered offensive by left-leaning people. Transgenderism is not really new. The issue is that it's basically been propped up like a virtue, that it's a good and great thing that someone can just think that their gender is not what their gender is, right? And so the problem is the Democrat Party has an enormous amount of people that are for that type of ideology, even when it comes to like bathrooms, even when it comes to like, men in sports with women. Like there's so many of these people that they've catered to that it would be a tremendous disadvantage to abandon those people. The problem is that they're already disadvantaged by having these ideologies. And so it's a big problem. This isn't even touching on the immigration issue either. I mean, for many years now, Democrats have constantly bemoaned immigration being considered a crime if it's not done in a particular way. So that in and of itself is even a whole nother conversation. But because they've constantly cried about, children being in cages, which is really just them being detained while the adults have committed the crime of coming to the country illegally. The same thing that was happening during Obama's presidency. The same presidency in which even more people were deported than they were under Trump. They fought so hard over this stuff and virtue signaled for so long over an unsustainable ideology, an unsustainable idea, that they basically have to keep going with it. Like, no Democratic politician right now, if they stood up and basically said, you're coming to this country illegally, you therefore should, face the consequences and be deported, they're not going to get support in their party. They're not. If any Democrat stands up right now and says, any person who thinks that men and women's sports should basically be encroached upon by the opposite gender should not be a thing, they would not get any support in their party. Like, zero. Like, they would get no support. And the reason being, despite the fact that 15 years ago, Democrats would agree with those ideas, the problem is they've been feeding this animal, this creature, so to speak, which is basically wokeness. And now that they've embraced it, they've constantly propped it up, they've supported it for so long, they have to keep feeding it. To be a Democrat right now and run in politics, you're at a huge disadvantage. An enormous disadvantage, because you cannot abandon this base that you've basically supported for so long and expect to have any sort of movement in the political world. I mean, you can get some play in the political world, but with Trump winning, with DEI and wokeness basically being removed more and more from the governmental system in our country, it's a very, very difficult thing for Democrats to deal with. So think about it. Just think about this. Think about this. Having rainbow flags everywhere, constantly just being obnoxious about this and that, standing up. Like, there are people who do the trans stuff who don't want any sort of light shined on them publicly. There are people that have been living those lifestyles for a long time and they weren't obnoxious about it. The truth is, people were more than okay with just kind of putting up with the fact that people live those ways. But when they stood up and basically said, you have to acknowledge and prop up and agree with my behavior, it became a problem. And so now the Democrat Party just basically cannot abandon that thing. They placed their bets for a very long time. It gave them some play for a while, but now it's clearly obvious to the majority of Americans that this is unsustainable. And so the future is going to be really interesting. In fact, I predict that after Trump's term is over, there will be another conservative that wins the presidential election. Because even in 4 years, there'll still be so many people who were propped up by Democrats and supported for so long that will still hold these ideologies. And so any leftist Democrat that stands up and says, I disagree with this, we need to change our tune, they will not be supported anymore. I mean, they'll be considered like a traitor. You're more of a conservative now, And so the Democrat Party is just in a lot of trouble. They're basically reaping what they have sown for so long. And so I'm very, very happy with the way things are going. Our country, as far as I'm concerned, is going in a much better direction than it has in a long time. And given just the reality that this stuff just couldn't survive for very long anyway, only in these little vacuums where everything's decent in society, like standing up and virtue signaling over these issues only really works in a society that isn't going without. Like, people don't care about this stuff in third world countries. Like standing up and fighting for trans rights is not something that people are worried about in Bosnia. It's not their concern. Romanians are not concerned at all with, this. They're just trying to survive more or less over there. And so this stuff just wouldn't last forever. And the Democrat Party is going to have to pay this price for a very long time. I think it's going to basically take a generational shift before this stuff really can change in their favor again. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Man, this road's a little bumpy. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Your like, your comments, your subscriptions, all of those things can help other people find these videos if you find them useful. Also consider sharing it as well. If you think that Christians need to dip their feet into the political scene, share this with someone else, because this stuff really does matter. At any rate, this is Cedric with Oxford Christianity. I'll see you guys later.